This video, I'm gonna start to add more to the details of the face. So I'm gonna go over some reminders for the eyes, noses, and mouths. So I have more skin tone to work on, but for the sake of the video, I'm just gonna keep going here. So for the eyes, since she's wearing makeup in this photo, there's gonna be more extreme lines around the eyes that we might not find naturally. So if your person is not wearing makeup, you want to look for more subtle lines that you're gonna see around the eyes. And remember, we do not always have to blend, so sometimes just really making sure your pencil's really sharp, you can get some fine details. And I'm trying to match the values I see here. Now, this isn't quite dark enough yet for the eyeliner, but it will get there. I just wanna make sure I'm being patient with my layers. So that's why I'm gonna take my time, allow myself to fill in some other spaces to see how it looks compared to other spots. So sometimes I might be like, this seems dark enough. Maybe I'm ready to move on, but I won't really know until I continue to add more to other spaces. So I know that she has darker eyes, or the iris of her eyes is darker. So I'm just gonna go ahead and apply a little bit more pencil here before I blend, just because I know that it's darker, but I wanna keep those highlights in the eyes. So I'm only gonna place dark value in a few spots and then blend to see how that looks. And if I completely blend over a space and I'm like, oh no, there's supposed to be highlights there, I can always come back in with an eraser, and that's where some smaller, more detailed erasers might come in handy. Overall, the entire iris is not dark enough yet, so I'm just gonna gently apply another layer of value, and then I'll blend, see if I need to apply another layer of value or not. So it's a lot of back and forth. If I push something too dark too quick, it might be harder to fix later. So I just like to kind of build my layers up slowly. It's always easier for me, anyways, to add more pencil rather than erase all the time. Kind of getting an overall gray. I plan to take my eraser in a little bit. So I have the iris in there. The iris is not nearly as defined as what we did in our practice. Like I can clearly see, or sorry, I mean the pupil. So I can clearly see that pupil. In this one, the highlight here is blocking part of her pupil. So I'm going to make sure that, okay, I can see it's a little bit darker towards the center, and this is where pulling up a photo on your iPad might help. But I can't see the entire pupil. If I can't see it, I'm not gonna draw it. I'm not going to just imagine that something is there if it's not. Do part of the shadow over the eye here. I know this is getting a little too dark in some spots, but that's okay. Sometimes it's easier to just be able to blend over a whole space and then just erase a little bit. Need to bring back this highlight. I'm not gonna worry about the highlight being as white as it needs to be right now. I just want it to be close because I might do more blending and then I can really come back in and erase it to the white that it should be later on, because that can get kind of frustrating when you erase and then you blend and you erase and you blend. All right, so I'm gonna make these corners of the eye just a little bit darker. So again, having some of this information here is allowing me to see that, hey, the skin tone actually needs to get a little bit darker over here. So the first layer that you do in spaces does not have to be perfect. It will get there over time because we can continue to make changes. We might see things a little bit differently at different points in our project. I'm gonna, this small blending stump was making too many marks, so I'm taking the bigger one over the top to kind of smooth that out. All right, I need to make sure before I do the eyebrow that the skin tone is all filled in here. So I can still kind of see the outline of the eyebrow. I think it needs to get just a little bit darker over here. I'm gonna be very picky with how I finish the skin tone around this area because then I can do the eyebrow over the top. All right, that gives me some room. I can still work on that a little bit. So what I need to do now is look at the direction of these marks. Some of them are darker, some of them are lighter. And I'm just gonna move my pencil very lightly. So I'm a little bit low. I was looking at the wrong line that I can see through here. So I'm just gonna cover up that eraser mark and try again. So the lines go kind of straight up at first, and then they start to curve over. Notice that I really need to have that skin tone down first, otherwise it would be white underneath the eyebrow. Just random marks, just making sure they're going in the right direction. And actually, I'm just gonna leave that for now. I'm gonna keep going with my drawing and see how I can continue to add to that space later. I just didn't wanna lose that spot that I had planned out for the eyebrow. So I'm gonna come back to that later and keep adding more. I could do a little bit of blending over that space too, so I'll come back for that. I'm gonna keep working until I do the eyelashes. I would definitely add more to this space, but when I do the eyelashes, I wanna make sure that I'm moving out far enough and I'm moving in the direction that they actually go. So that's gonna be my goal, and then they come in this way. I'm just gonna do them lightly so I can keep blending over the top. All right, so I'll come back and add more to that later, but I think I still have more work to do for the eye. I have to kind of crisp up some of these edges. And then I have a few lashes to put on the bottom that I can see. I have some highlights to do underneath. So that's why I'm gonna wait to do more of those lashes so I can keep working that space. And I'm gonna do the other eye. All right, if I'm working on the nose, noses are really tricky because it's a lot of fast value changes in a small space. So we want to try our best to block things out. So again, if I take my blending stump and I say, okay, it's dark over here. I actually need a little bit more pencil over here. This is like the darkest edge of the nose on this side. And then it comes this way. So I'm actually gonna move my blending stump this direction so that it actually helps to make the nose look like it's curving that way. So this value kind of makes this triangle shape. Some overall gray in this spot. Okay, before I start shading over the nostrils, since I have those sketched into the correct place, I'm gonna take my pencil, make those nice crisp edges here. Some of you might not see the nostrils as much depending on the angle of the photo. So that might be very, very thin. You might not be able to do a lot of blending because it's gonna be more of just like a mark or a line on the paper. And I wanna get some overall gray here. But this is where things are gonna make a difference. There's a slight highlight here and it goes in this direction. So I'm gonna move my eraser in that direction. Kind of erase a little bit from like the ball of the nose. And then I'll keep blending. So I'm getting some eraser marks, but I know I have more blending to do. This corner is gonna be a little bit darker so that it leads to the bridge of the nose, which is the lightest part, because it comes up and that's where the light hits. All right, and this is where I'm just gonna add a little bit more value underneath the nose, because that part generally tends to catch a shadow. This is where I need to bring my pencil in to get some of this detail back. Just a light pencil line. I'm gonna blend over the top of it with the blending stump. And the value is looking like a little bit like dirty. It just needs a few more layers. So be patient, understand that it'll get there. This is just the start. All right, not everything's perfect yet. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep working around the skin tone here and the lips so that I can come back and kind of compare things a little bit easier to this image. All right, lips can get kind of tricky. If the person is wearing lipstick or lip liner, that's gonna make the edges of their lips a little bit more defined. And if they aren't, really your lips are skin. Right? Sometimes we think of our lips as being a different part of our body, but our lips are just skin, and that skin just changes value a little bit as it moves around. So what we want to do is capture where those values change, and the entire lips are not going to be filled in. a different value if that's not what you see here. Like if I filled her lips in all a really dark value, like as dark as the eyes, that's not what I see here. That's this idea that we have from when we're little and we draw lips like this, right? And then we just like color them all in dark, or at least that's what some of us might have done when we were younger. And that's just not what we see all the time. There are times when we will see that, and again, that's if someone is wearing makeup or something that's making things more defined. So the values right here in the center of her lips really blend together. There are very subtle changes here. So I'm not gonna have a harsh line where the lip ends right there. I'm actually just gonna kind of blend it into the skin. Observing what we see, not relying on like making up things that we know from the past or our past experiences of drawing someone. And lips are kind of tricky because at first they can look very, almost like puffy, just with the way that the highlights and shadows are being casted here. So I'm working overall blended smoothly, but eventually I will start to take my pencil and eraser to get those lines that we have in our lips. Remember, it's all a process. It's not gonna look perfect at first. So there's a shadow underneath here. Again, I would have liked to have the skin tone done before doing this so I could compare those values in that surface. So I'm just gonna fill this space in with kind of a gray that I think it could be. The lips form different shapes between the nose and the mouth. Right, that's what allows our lips to form over our teeth if we think back to our skull drawings. So I kind of think of that area as a part of the lips because it leads from the nose into the lips. It's what brings the lips out from our skeletal system. This top lip is kind of all one gray, with some very minor changes here and there, and then some highlights since she's wearing kind of like a gloss over her lips. Kind of blend that all gray. Okay. I want to be careful when I do stuff like that I just did because I can smear my drawing. So I just did that very lightly over the top to get rid of some of those eraser kind of flakes. All right, I need to start bringing in some highlights to start seeing more of this definition. So there's a very thin highlight here that at first when I do this, it's gonna look too bright. But I will blend over it to kind of dull that brightness down a little bit. So this is not just a circle. When I'm seeing there for that highlight, let's draw over the top of here. I see this shape right here. So having the highlight stretch up in those random kind of marks is what's gonna make it look more realistic. So not just focusing on highlights and shadows being circles or ovals, but actually looking at the shape that's there. So if I start with kind of a general shape for the highlight, then I need to bring those lines up. And then I can kind of gently just sweep over the top to kind of dull some of those highlights down. And this is just the beginning. So now I'm starting to see this look a little bit more realistic. It's getting there, but over time I have a little bit more blending to do. I need to do this same thing I just did with this highlight to make it look more natural. I need to do that here with my pencil, just kind of dragging my pencil up. We do have like those creases or lines or kind of like wrinkles, I guess, in our lips. So adding those things over time is gonna help things get more and more realistic. But again, I don't like to start on those things too soon. I like to give myself plenty of time to really analyze and evaluate the values around a surface first, so that I don't end up having to blend over the top of details that I already did, and then I have to redo them. So I really like to give myself that time, that opportunity. I hold off on too much detail so that I feel comfortable to go back in and make changes. And then at some point, I'm gonna have to suck it up and just start with those details. So I'm gonna continue to work on like the ear shape. And then I'll continue the eye afterwards since I've already done one eye for this video. Ears are weird. Like that's normally the first thing I say when I help students draw ears. So you'll probably hear me say that a lot. At this point, I'm getting to the point where like I'm dragging my hand over my drawing, so I could set an extra piece of paper here to draw over the top so I'm not smearing my work. Keep that in mind. So that's my first thing that I start with ears. Ears are weird. So looking at this picture on my iPad might help a little bit, but I can actually feel on my ear the little flap that's on the top. There's gonna be a shadow right underneath that. So that's what I'm drawing in here. You can see that there's a little bit of darker space. And some of this information is blurry, so let it be blurry in your drawing. If it's not crisp, outlined, and very clear, you don't have to try and imagine what that will look like. You're just drawing what you see. So don't force detail if you don't need to. So I'm outlining the ear because her hair is very dark. So the value right next here is gonna be very dark. Don't outline things if it's not actually outlined. But here in this area, you know, I'm not moving on to the hair yet. But this is where I'm gonna be for the ear. All right, and then there's some hair right here that comes over her ear. So all I need to do for right now is lay down some skin tone about what I think it's gonna look like in this space. Right, I can kind of see through that hair. So I'm just laying down some skin tone. So again, it's not gonna look perfect right away. And later, once I start the hair, I will drag little strands of hair over the top of the skin tone. I got a little bit too dark right here. That's like that triangle flap of the ear. Again, ears are weird. All right. And then I can go back in and just add a few more changes to this value. If I leave it too flat gray, it's just not gonna look as interesting as it could. Kind of gray there. That's really where I'm gonna stop for now. When I do more hair, I can continue to add to that space. I think that's a good start.